The little girl said, "I know you, your photo is in my dad's picture frame," instantly leaving the millionaire stunned. Michael Johnson woke up with the first ray of sunlight filtering through the silk curtains of his bedroom. Like every Sunday, he prepared for his morning ritual, a run through the tree-lined streets of the exclusive neighborhood of Silent Valley. At 45 years old, Michael was the epitome of success, owner of one of the country's leading tech companies, with a fortune counted in millions. However, as he laced up his state-of-the-art running shoes, Michael felt an emptiness that all his money couldn't fill. His mansion, with its 20 rooms and Olympic-sized pool, felt cold and empty. Silence was his only constant companion. He stepped outside and began to run, letting the rhythm of his steps drown out the thoughts that tormented him. The streets were nearly deserted at that early hour on a Sunday, with only a few gardeners working in the immaculate gardens of the neighboring mansions. Michael ran without a fixed route, allowing his feet to take him through familiar streets and others not so much. His mind wandered between memories of the past and worries of the present. How had he gotten to this point? He had everything money could buy, but he felt lonelier than ever. He was so lost in his thoughts that he almost didn't hear the voice of the girl calling him, "I know you, your photo is in my dad's wallet." Michael stopped abruptly, his heart pounding from both the exercise and the surprise. He looked around, searching for the source of the voice. That's when he saw her, a girl of about 7 years old, with brown hair tied in 2 braids and large expressive eyes looking at him with curiosity. Her clothes were simple, indicating that her family did not enjoy great luxuries. Confused and a little intrigued, Michael crouched down to her level. "What's your name, dear?" he asked with a kind smile. "My name is Abella," she replied, smiling back. "My dad has a photo of you in his wallet. He showed it to me." A chill ran down Michael's spine. Who could this girl's father be, and why would he have a photo of him? His mind began racing, trying to find a logical explanation. "And what does your dad look like, Abella? Where is he now?" he asked, trying to hide his growing curiosity. "He's at home, we can go there now if you want," Abella said, confidently taking Michael's hand. For a moment, Michael hesitated. It was Sunday morning, and Abella's father was probably resting. Besides, was it wise to follow an unknown child? But curiosity outweighed caution. He nodded and let Abella lead him. As they walked, Michael noticed how the landscape gradually changed. The imposing mansions gave way to more modest homes and then to apartment buildings. Abella walked with determination, occasionally greeting a neighbor. Finally, they arrived at a set of simple but well-kept houses. Abella led him to a worn door and knocked firmly. Michael held his breath, unsure of what to expect. The door slowly opened, revealing a thin man with a tired appearance and unshaven beard. Michael felt the air escape his lungs. He immediately recognized those eyes, that jaw, those slumped shoulders. It was impossible, and yet there he was. "Is it really you?" Michael exclaimed, feeling a mix of surprise, emotion, and a touch of guilt. The man's eyes filled with tears, and he took a hesitant step forward. "Yes, it's me," he said, his voice breaking. "It's me, Daniel." Abella, observing the tension between the two, innocently asked, "Dad, you know him, right? He's the man in the photo." "Yes, Abella," Daniel replied, trying to control his emotion. "He's my brother." Abella looked from one to the other, not fully understanding the complexity of the moment. "Abella, why don't you go play while I talk to him?" Daniel suggested, trying to keep his voice calm. The girl nodded and ran inside the house. The two brothers stood there, looking at each other as a heavy silence settled between them. It had been almost 10 years since they had last seen each other, and time seemed to have dug a chasm between them. "Come in, please," Daniel finally said, opening the door wider. Michael entered the modest home, feeling a surge of memories and emotions threatening to overwhelm him. The unexpected reunion with his brother would mark the beginning of a journey of reconciliation, challenges, and redemption that neither of them could foresee. The living room was small but cozy, with worn yet clean furniture. On the walls, Michael noticed some family photos, including one where Daniel was holding a newborn Abella. The image brought a pang of guilt. He had missed so many important moments in his brother's life. "Sit down, please," Daniel said, gesturing to a sofa. "Would you like something to drink?" "I have coffee." "Coffee would be great, thanks," Michael replied, sitting down with some discomfort. While Daniel headed to the kitchen, Michael couldn't help but notice how much his brother had changed. He was no longer the carefree, energetic young man Michael remembered. Now he seemed tired, as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. Daniel returned with 2 steaming cups of coffee. He sat down in front of Michael, and for a moment, neither of them knew what to say. "So, you have a daughter," Michael began, breaking the awkward silence. Daniel nodded, a small smile lighting up his tired face. "Yes, Abella. She's 7. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me." "She looks like you," Michael commented. "She has your eyes." "And her mother's character," Daniel added, his smile fading a bit. "Her mother?" Michael left the question hanging in the air, fearing the answer. "She passed away 3 years ago," Daniel said quietly. "A car accident." Michael felt like he had been punched in the stomach. His brother had been through so much, and he didn't even know. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I had no idea." "How could you have known?" Daniel replied, with a hint of bitterness in his voice. "We haven't spoken in years." Silence fell between them again, heavy with years of distance and unspoken reproach. How have you been?" Michael asked, aware of how inadequate the question sounded. Daniel let out a humorless laugh. "I've had better days, but Abella and I manage." Michael nodded, unsure of what else to say. He looked around the small living room, noticing the signs of a modest but dignified life. It was a stark contrast to his own mansion, full of luxuries but devoid of warmth. "And you?" Daniel asked. "You've become quite the tycoon, from what I've heard." Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Yes, well, the company has been successful." "I'm happy for you," Daniel said, and to Michael's surprise, he sounded sincere. "Daniel, Michael began, not exactly sure what he wanted to say, apologize, offer help, try to explain the years of silence. But before he could continue, Abella came running into the room, holding a drawing. "Dad, look what I made," she exclaimed, showing off a colorful drawing of 3 figures, a man, a girl, and a taller man. "It's beautiful, honey," Daniel said, hugging his daughter. "Who are they?" "It's us," Abella explained. "You, me, and Uncle Michael." The 2 brothers exchanged a glance, surprised at how easily Abella had accepted the situation. "Abella, dear," Daniel began gently, "Uncle Michael probably has to leave now. He has a very busy life." Michael felt like cold water had been thrown on him. It was true, he had a busy life, meetings, calls, important decisions to make. But suddenly, none of that seemed to matter as much as the present moment. "Actually," Michael said, surprising even himself, "I was wondering if you both would like to go out for breakfast. I know a place nearby that makes delicious pancakes." Abella jumped up in excitement. "Yes, please, Dad, can we go?" Daniel looked at his brother, a mix of surprise and caution in his eyes. "I don't know, Michael. We don't want to impose." "It's no imposition," Michael insisted. "Please, I'd like to get to know my niece better and catch up." There was a moment of tension as Daniel considered the offer. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, give us a few minutes to change clothes." While Daniel and Abella got ready, Michael stayed in the living room, looking at the photos on the wall. He saw his brother at different stages of life: graduation, wedding, Abella's birth. Important moments he had missed. He felt a determination growing inside him. He couldn't change the past, but perhaps, just maybe, he could be part of the future. When Daniel and Abella returned, ready to go, Michael greeted them with a genuine smile. As they left the house, with Abella happily chatting between them, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Breakfast would be just the beginning, a first step on a path of reconciliation and rediscovery, a path that would lead the Johnson brothers to face their past, heal old wounds, and perhaps build a new future together. The restaurant Michael had chosen was a small, family-owned place, with wooden tables and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Abella looked around with wide eyes, while Daniel seemed a bit uncomfortable, aware that this wasn't the kind of place he was used to visiting. Sitting at a table by the window, with steaming plates of pancakes in front of them, the Johnson brothers found themselves in an awkward silence, broken only by Abella's enthusiastic comments about the food. "So, Abella," Michael began, trying to break the ice, "what do you like to do?" "I love drawing," the girl replied excitedly, "and playing soccer. Dad taught me." Michael looked at his brother in surprise. "You still play soccer?" Daniel shrugged. "Every now and then. It's something Abella and I do together on the weekends." "I remember when we used to play together in the backyard," Michael said, with a nostalgic smile. "You were better than me." "I still am," Daniel joked, and for a moment, the tension between them seemed to ease. Abella looked at them curiously. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about Uncle Michael before?" The innocent question dropped like a bomb at the table. Daniel visibly tensed, while Michael lowered his gaze to his plate. "It's complicated, honey," Daniel responded after a moment. "Sometimes adults make mistakes and drift apart." "But we're here now," Michael interjected, looking at his brother with a mix of guilt and hope, "and if your dad agrees, I'd like us to get to know each other better." Daniel looked at his brother for a long moment before slowly nodding. "I guess we could try." The rest of the breakfast passed in a more relaxed atmosphere, with Abella telling stories about school and her friends. Michael listened attentively, amazed by his niece's energy and joy. When they finished eating, Michael insisted on paying the bill, despite Daniel's protests. As they left the restaurant, they found themselves unsure of how to proceed. "Would you like to take a walk in the park?" Michael suggested. "There's one nearby." Abella nodded enthusiastically, and Daniel, seeing his daughter's excitement, agreed. As they walked through the park's trails, with Abella running ahead to explore, Michael and Daniel found themselves walking side by side in a silence filled with unspoken questions. "Daniel," Michael began, gathering the courage to address the elephant in the room, "I know it's been years, and things between us didn't end well, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, especially after what happened to your wife." Daniel kept his gaze fixed on the path for a moment before responding. "It wasn't just your fault, Michael. I made mistakes, too. My gambling addiction. I ruined a lot of things. Even so, I should have been there. You're my brother." They stopped at a bench, watching Abella play nearby with some other children. "How did you overcome it?" Michael asked, referring to the addiction. Daniel sighed deeply. "It wasn't easy. I hit rock bottom several times. But when Maria got pregnant, I knew I had to change, for her, for the baby. I joined a support group, got help, and when Abella was born, I knew I couldn't go back." Michael nodded, feeling a mixture of admiration and regret. "You did it on your own. I should have been there to support you." "I wasn't completely alone," Daniel admitted. "Maria's parents helped me a lot, especially after the accident. Without them, I don't know what would have happened to Abella and me." "I'm glad you had that support," Michael said sincerely. "Daniel, I know it's a lot to ask, but do you think we could try to rebuild our relationship? I'd like to be part of your life, part of Abella's life, if you'll let me." Daniel remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on his daughter, who was laughing as she swung on a nearby swing. "It won't be easy, Michael. A lot of time has passed, and we've both changed." "I know," Michael nodded, "but I'm willing to try, to do whatever it takes." "Why now?" Daniel asked, turning to look at his brother. "What's changed?" Michael reflected for a moment before answering honestly. "I'm not completely sure. Maybe it was seeing Abella, realizing all that I've missed, or maybe it's that I finally understood that all the success and money mean nothing if you're alone." Daniel nodded slowly, as if he perfectly understood what his brother was trying to say. "I can't promise anything," he finally said, "but we can try, for Abella's sake, if not for our own." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, Daniel. I won't let you down this time." At that moment, Abella came running toward them, her cheeks flushed from playing and excitement. "Dad, Uncle Michael, did you see how high I was swinging?" "We saw, sweetheart," Daniel smiled, hugging his daughter. "You were flying." "Uncle Michael," Abella said, turning to him with bright eyes, "will you come visit us again?" Michael looked at Daniel, seeking his approval. When his brother nodded slightly, he responded, "I'd love to, Abella. If your dad agrees, I'd like to see both of you again soon." "Yes!" Abella exclaimed, jumping up and down in excitement. "Can we go to your house next time, Uncle? Do you have a pool? I've always wanted to swim in a pool." Michael chuckled softly. "Yes, I have a pool, and I'd love for you to use it." As they walked back to Daniel's house, Michael felt that something inside him had changed. The emptiness he had felt for so long was starting to fill with the warmth of the family he had forgotten he had. When they said their goodbyes, Michael hugged Abella, and then, after a moment of hesitation, he hugged Daniel as well. The embrace was brief and a little awkward, but it was full of unspoken promises. "I'll call you this week," Michael said. "Maybe we can arrange that visit to the pool." Daniel nodded. "We'd like that." As Michael walked away, turning occasionally to wave at Abella, who waved back enthusiastically, he felt that he was leaving behind the lonely, empty man he had been that morning. The path to reconciliation and redemption would be long and probably difficult, but for the first time in years, Michael Johnson felt hope. Back at his mansion, Michael found himself looking at the empty rooms with new eyes. He no longer saw symbols of his success, but spaces that could be filled with laughter and family memories. He went to his study and pulled out an old photo album he had kept in the back of a drawer. The images of his childhood with Daniel transported him to a simpler time, when they were inseparable. He remembered the summers playing in their parents' backyard, the silly fights that always ended in laughter, and the promises to always be there for each other. When had they lost that? When had money and success become more important than family? Michael closed the album with determination. He couldn't change the past, but he could do everything possible to build a better future, one that included his brother and niece. He picked up his phone and, after a moment of hesitation, dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Mom, it's me, Michael." "Yes, I'm fine. Listen, I have something to tell you." The following days passed in a whirlwind of emotions and preparations for Michael. After the call to his mother, which resulted in a long and emotional conversation about the past and the future, he dedicated himself to preparing his house for Daniel and Abella's visit. By Friday afternoon, Michael was nervously waiting at the entrance of his mansion. He had hired a cleaning crew to make sure everything was spotless and had stocked the fridge with snacks and drinks he thought Abella might like. When the taxi pulled up in front of the house, Michael felt his heart race. Abella was the first to get out, her eyes widening as she took in the enormous house. "Wow," she exclaimed. "It's like a castle." Daniel got out after her, looking a little uncomfortable in his jeans and casual shirt. Michael noticed his brother had made an effort to shave and tidy up for the occasion. "Welcome," Michael said, trying to sound casual despite his nerves. "I'm glad you could come." "Thanks for inviting us," Daniel replied, his voice a mixture of gratitude and a touch of awkwardness. Abella, however, didn't notice the tension between the adults. "Uncle Michael, where's the pool? Can we swim now?" Michael laughed, grateful for his niece's enthusiasm. "Of course, Abella, but how about I give you a tour of the house first?" As they toured the rooms, Michael noticed how Daniel looked around with a mix of awe and something that seemed like sadness. Abella, on the other hand, was fascinated by everything, especially the home theater and the huge kitchen. "I've never seen a house this big," Daniel commented quietly when they reached Michael's study. "Sometimes it's too big," Michael admitted, "especially when you're alone." There was a moment of awkward silence before Abella saved the day again with her enthusiasm. "The pool, Uncle Michael. Can we go now?" "Of course," Michael smiled. "Why don't you go get changed? I'll show you where the dressing rooms are." While Abella and Daniel changed, Michael took the opportunity to make a quick call to his assistant, canceling a meeting he had scheduled for that afternoon. For the first time in years, work could wait. When Michael stepped out to the pool area, he found a scene that filled his heart with unexpected warmth. Abella was in the water, laughing and splashing, while Daniel watched from the edge, a genuine smile on his face. "Come on, Uncle Michael," Abella called out. "The water's perfect." Without a second thought, Michael took off his shirt and jumped into the pool, joining his niece in her playful antics. Soon, even Daniel joined in, and for a moment, it felt as if the years of separation had never existed. They played and swam until the sun began to set, painting the sky in golden and pink hues. They climbed out of the water, exhausted but happy, and Michael offered them soft, fluffy towels. "Are you hungry?" Michael asked. "I thought we could have a barbecue in the garden." "Yes, please," Abella exclaimed. "Can I help?" "Of course," Michael smiled. "Actually, I'll need all the help I can get. I'm not the best cook in the world." As they prepared the meal together, Michael realized how natural it all felt. Abella chatted happily about school and her friends, Daniel added occasional comments, and Michael found himself enjoying it more than he had enjoyed anything in years. Sitting around the patio table, with the night sky above them and the smell of freshly cooked food in the air, Michael felt that, for the first time, his house truly felt like a home. "This is nice," Daniel commented quietly, while Abella devoured her burger. "Thanks, Michael." "There's nothing to thank," Michael replied. "I've missed this, family." Daniel nodded, a shadow of sadness crossing his face. "So have I." There was a moment of silence, broken only by the sounds of the night and Abella's enthusiastic comments about the food. "Daniel," Michael began, gathering his courage, "I know it's early, and we have a lot to rebuild, but I'd like to be part of your lives, truly. Not just occasional visits, but to be there for you, for Abella." Daniel looked at his brother for a long moment, as if trying to gauge the sincerity in his eyes. "Are you sure? Your life is very different from ours, Michael. I don't want you to feel obligated." "Does that mean we'll come more often, Dad? Can I use the pool again?" Abella asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Daniel looked at his daughter and then at his brother, a small smile forming on his lips. "I suppose so, sweetheart, if your uncle agrees." "More than agree," Michael said, feeling a surge of emotion. "In fact, I was thinking that maybe you could stay this weekend. I have plenty of rooms, and we could make more plans together." Abella jumped with joy at the idea, and Daniel, after a moment of doubt, nodded. "All right, we'll stay." That night, as Michael prepared for bed, he heard laughter coming from the room where Daniel and Abella were staying. The sound filled the empty hallways of the mansion, bringing life to a space that had been far too quiet for far too long. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. The mansion was no longer just a symbol of his success, but a home that was beginning to fill with the love and warmth of family. As he lay down, Michael made a silent promise: he would do everything in his power to keep this, to be the brother and uncle that Daniel and Abella deserved. The road to full reconciliation would be long, but he was willing to take it step by step. With the distant sound of his family's laughter lulling him to sleep, Michael smiled, dreaming of a future full of possibilities. The weekend passed in a whirlwind of activities and laughter. Michael, Daniel, and Abella visited the local zoo, watched movies in the home theater, and even played a little soccer in the mansion's expansive yard. To Michael's surprise, he found that he enjoyed these simple moments more than any of the lavish parties or business events he was used to. By Sunday afternoon, as he helped Daniel and Abella pack their things, Michael felt a pang of sadness at the thought of how empty the house would feel once they left. "It's been a wonderful weekend," he said, trying to keep a light tone. "I hope we can do it again soon." Daniel nodded, a small smile on his lips. "It's been surprisingly nice." "Thanks, Michael." Abella, who was packing her drawings into a backpack, looked up with bright eyes. "Can we come back next weekend, Uncle Michael?" Michael chuckled softly. "I'd love that, Abella, but I think that depends on your dad." They both looked at Daniel, who seemed to consider the idea for a moment. "Well, we can't come every weekend," he finally said, "but maybe once a month." Michael's face lit up. "That would be perfect. And maybe, could I visit you too? I'd like to see where you live, to be part of your everyday life." Daniel looked surprised by the suggestion but slowly nodded. "Sure, that would be fine." As they said their goodbyes at the door, Michael bent down to hug Abella. "Thank you for coming, little one. You've filled this house with joy." Abella hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Uncle Michael. I had so much fun." Then, Michael turned to his brother. There was a moment of hesitation before they hugged, warmer and less awkward than the week before. "Take care, Daniel," Michael said. "And please, call me if you need anything at all." Daniel nodded, emotion clear in his eyes. "I will." "Thanks, brother." As he watched the taxi drive away, Michael felt a mix of sadness and hope. The house felt emptier, yes, but also full of new possibilities. In the weeks that followed, Michael found himself reorganizing his life in ways he had never considered before. He began delegating more responsibilities at work, ensuring that his weekends were free. He even started leaving the office at reasonable hours during the week, something that surprised his employees. One Wednesday afternoon, Michael found himself driving to Daniel's neighborhood. He had called earlier to make sure it was okay to visit, and now, as he parked in front of the modest house, he felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Abella was the first to greet him, running toward him with open arms. "Uncle Michael, you came." Michael lifted her up, laughing. "Of course I came. I promised, didn't I?" Daniel appeared at the door, a tired but genuine smile on his face. "Hey, Michael. Welcome." They went inside, and Michael found himself looking around with new eyes. The living room, though small, was full of photos and drawings by Abella. The kitchen, though modest, smelled of something delicious cooking. "I hope you like stew," Daniel said, a bit embarrassed. "It's nothing fancy, but—" "It smells wonderful," Michael interrupted sincerely. "Much better than any fancy restaurant." During dinner, Michael listened attentively as Abella talked about her day at school and Daniel commented on his work. He realized that, despite their financial limitations, there was a warmth and love in this house that his mansion had never had. After dinner, while Abella did her homework, Michael and Daniel sat in the small backyard with cups of coffee. "Daniel," Michael began, gathering his courage, "I've been thinking. I'd like to help, financially, I mean." Daniel visibly tensed. "Michael, that's not necessary. We manage just fine." "I know," Michael quickly said. I don't want to offend you. It's just that I have more money than I'll ever spend in my life, and I'd like to use it for something meaningful. Maybe for Abella's education or to help you move to a bigger place, if you want. Daniel was silent for a moment, staring at his coffee cup. I appreciate the offer, Michael, really, but I don't want our relationship to be based on money. I already made that mistake once with gambling. Michael nodded, understanding. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that. It's just that I want to help, to be part of your lives. And you are, Daniel said, looking at his brother. We don't need your money, Michael, just your presence, your time. That's more valuable than any amount of money. Michael felt a lump in his throat. Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot to me. They sat in silence for a moment, the distant sound of Abella humming as she worked filling the air. You know, Daniel finally said, there is something you could help with, if you really want to. Anything, Michael replied immediately. The neighborhood community center is struggling. They need volunteers and maybe some donations for their extracurricular programs. I thought maybe, with your contacts. Michael smiled, feeling a surge of excitement. I'd love to help with that. In fact, why don't we go together tomorrow? We can see what they need exactly. Daniel nodded, a smile forming on his lips. That sounds like a great idea. As Michael prepared to leave that night, he felt that something had shifted, not just in his relationship with Daniel and Abella, but in himself. For the first time in years, he felt that he had a purpose beyond making money and closing deals. I'll be back tomorrow, he promised, hugging Abella and then Daniel. We have a community center to help. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the sky itself wanted to celebrate new beginnings. Michael woke up early, more excited than he had been in years for a day of work. But this wasn't an ordinary workday. Today, he was going to do something that really mattered. He arrived at Daniel's house just as he was seeing Abella off to school. The little girl ran up to him, hugging his legs before hopping onto the school bus. Good morning, Daniel greeted him, holding a cup of coffee. Ready to check out the community center? Michael nodded enthusiastically. More than ready. In fact, I did some research last night. It looks like the center has been struggling for years. Daniel sighed as they walked toward Michael's car. Yeah, it's a shame. It used to be the heart of the neighborhood. Now, they're barely able to keep the lights on. The community center turned out to be a worn-down building with potential, if given the right care. They were greeted by Elena, the center's director, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and tired eyes. Daniel, it's so good to see you, she said warmly before turning to Michael with curiosity. And who's this? Elena, this is my brother Michael, Daniel introduced them. He's interested in helping the center. Elena's eyes lit up. Really? That's wonderful. God knows we need all the help we can get. As Elena gave them a tour of the center, Michael took mental notes. The roof needed repairs, the electrical system was outdated, and most of the equipment was worn out or broken. What programs are you currently offering? Michael asked. Elena sighed. We used to have a lot, art classes, after-school tutoring, a seniors book club, but with the budget cuts, we're barely able to keep the after-school program running. Michael nodded, his mind already racing with possible solutions. What if we not only restore those programs, but add more? Maybe computer classes, a small community gym. Elena and Daniel looked at him with a mix of hope and skepticism. That would be a dream, Elena said, but how? Michael smiled. I have some contacts who might be interested in a corporate social responsibility project, and I'm willing to make a substantial personal donation. But more than that, I want to get personally involved, help organize, recruit volunteers. Daniel looked at his brother with newfound respect and pride. Count me in, too. I can help with the repairs, and I'm sure many people in the neighborhood would be willing to lend a hand. Elena seemed on the verge of tears. I don't know what to say. This could change everything. Then, Michael said, extending his hand, let's get started. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Michael used his contacts to secure donations from local businesses, while Daniel organized volunteer teams from the neighborhood to help with the repairs. Michael surprised himself by enjoying the manual labor, painting walls, fixing furniture, alongside the neighborhood residents. In the afternoons, he met with Elena and a team of volunteers to plan the new programs and how to implement them. Abella became a frequent visitor to the center, excited to help out in any way she could. Michael watched with pride as his niece organized books in the new library or helped younger children with their homework. One Saturday, while Michael and Daniel were taking a break from painting one of the classrooms, Daniel looked at his brother with a smile. "You know, I never thought I'd see you like this," he said. "Like what?" Michael asked, wiping a spot of paint from his cheek. "Happy," Daniel responded simply. "Truly happy." Michael paused, reflecting on his brother's words. "You're right," he finally said. "I don't think I've been truly happy in years. This feels right." Daniel nodded, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Michael. You've changed so much." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, Daniel. I couldn't have done it without you and Abella. You've both shown me what really matters in life." The brothers shared a moment of silence, the sound of laughter and hard work filling the air around them. Finally, after months of hard work and dedication, the grand reopening of the community center arrived. The building, once neglected, now gleamed with fresh paint and clean windows. Colorful banners announced the new programs, and a large crowd gathered for the opening ceremony. Michael, Daniel, and Abella stood beside Elena, all wearing community center t-shirts. As Elena gave an emotional speech of thanks, Michael looked around, amazed at what they had accomplished together. He saw families gathered, seniors chatting animatedly, children running around excitedly. He saw hope in people's eyes, a new energy in the neighborhood. When it was his turn to speak, Michael approached the microphone with humility. "I'm not here as a benefactor or a savior," he began. "I'm here as part of this community. This center is a testament to what we can achieve and we work together, when we care for each other. It has taught me more than I could ever teach anyone. It has shown me the true meaning of wealth, and it has nothing to do with money in the bank." He looked at Daniel and Abella, who smiled back at him with pride. "My family brought me here, and you have become my extended family. Thank you for letting me be part of something so special." As the crowd applauded, Michael felt his heart fill with a joy he had never experienced before. He knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one filled with purpose and love. In the months following the community center's reopening, Michael continued to expand his work with the foundation. They opened more community centers, implemented educational and job training programs, and worked tirelessly to improve the lives of people in underserved communities. Daniel became the foundation's director of operations, overseeing the practical implementation of projects. His experience and connection with the community were invaluable to the foundation's continued success. Abella, having grown up witnessing the positive impact her family had on the community, decided to follow in her uncle and father's footsteps. She studied social work at university and joined the foundation after graduating, bringing fresh ideas and energy to its mission. One day, while overseeing the construction of a new center in a neighborhood across town, Daniel looked at his brother with a mix of pride and wonder. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I think you've found your true calling," Daniel said. Michael smiled, watching the eager volunteers work. "I wouldn't have believed it a year ago. It's amazing how life can take unexpected turns." Speaking of unexpected turns, Daniel said with a mischievous smile, "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with Elena lately." Michael felt his cheeks redden slightly. He and the community center director had developed a close friendship over the past few months. Their shared passion for community work and their dedication to making a difference had brought them closer together. "Well, we work together on a lot of projects," Michael replied, trying to sound casual. Daniel laughed. "Come on, brother, I know you. There's something more, isn't there?" Michael sighed, a shy smile forming on his lips. "Maybe. It's different from any relationship I've had before. Elena is incredible, her compassion, her strength, she inspires me every day." "I'm happy for you," Daniel said, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "You deserve to be happy." As the sun set over the city, Michael reflected on how much his life had changed in such a short time. From being a lonely, self-centered executive, he had become a man with purpose, surrounded by family and friends, and possibly on the verge of a meaningful new relationship. "You know what?" Michael said, looking at his brother. "I think I'm happy, happier than I've been in a long time." The brothers shared a smile, their bond stronger than ever. Together, they were not only building community centers but also creating a legacy of hope and positive change. As they walked back home, Michael realized that his life, once defined by financial success and status, was now full of something much more valuable: purpose, love, and the satisfaction of truly making a difference in people's lives. The future, once lonely and empty, now seemed full of exciting possibilities, and Michael was eager to see what the journey ahead would bring. 20 years had passed since that fateful Sunday when a little girl had changed the course of Michael Johnson's life. Now, at 65 years old, Michael found himself sitting on the porch of his home, a modest but cozy house in the same neighborhood where everything had begun. Elena, his companion for the last 2 decades, sat beside him, their hands intertwined as they watched the sunset. Time had left its marks on both of them, but their eyes still sparkled with the same passion and love that had brought them together. "What are you thinking about, my love?" Elena asked, noticing Michael's thoughtful expression. He smiled, gently squeezing her hand. "About how much everything has changed, and how lucky I am." At that moment, the sound of children's laughter filled the air. Michael and Elena looked toward the garden, where their 7-year-old granddaughter, Lucy, was playing with a group of neighborhood kids. Lucy was the daughter of Abella, who now ran the foundation that Michael and Elena had established so many years ago. Abella had married Michael, a teacher she had met while working at one of the community centers, and together they were raising Lucy with the same values of compassion and service that they had learned from their parents and uncles. Daniel, now a man with gray hair but the same warm smile, came out of the house carrying a tray of lemonade. "Kids," he called out, "come get something to drink." The children ran toward him, thanking him between giggles as they grabbed their glasses. Lucy walked over to the porch, her cheeks flushed from playing. "Grandpa," she said, looking at Michael with her big, curious eyes, "can you tell me the story again of how you met Aunt Abella?" Michael chuckled, lifting his granddaughter and sitting her on his lap. "But you've heard it 1,000 times already." "But I love it," Lucy insisted. "Please, Grandpa." Michael glanced at Elena and Daniel, who nodded with amused smiles. He began telling the story that had changed his life, the story of a little girl who had recognized him on the street and led him back to his family. As he spoke, Michael couldn't help but marvel at how life had come full circle. Here he was, telling his granddaughter a story that began with another little girl of her age, a girl who had been the catalyst for all this happiness. "And so, little Lucy," Michael concluded, "I learned that true wealth isn't found in money or the things we own, but in the people we love and the difference we can make in others' lives." Lucy hugged him tightly. "I love you, Grandpa. When I grow up, I want to be like you and Grandma Elena, helping people." Michael felt his heart swell with pride and emotion. "And you will be, little one. You have a big heart, just like your mom." At that moment, Abella and her husband Michael arrived, greeting everyone with warm hugs. Abella, now a woman in her 40s with the same bright smile she had as a child, sat beside her uncle. "Story time again," she asked with a knowing smile. Your daughter is insatiable, Michael laughed. She reminds me of someone I met many years ago. Abella took her uncle's hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. I will never stop thanking you for everything you've done for us, for this community. Michael shook his head. No, Abella, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You and your father showed me the way to a truly rich life. As the family chatted and laughed, sharing stories and memories, Michael couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey his life had been. From a lonely, self-centered man, he had become the patriarch of a loving family and a pillar of a thriving community. The community centers, which had begun as a personal redemption project, had expanded throughout the city, changing countless lives. The foundation, now run by Abella with the help of her husband Michael, continued to grow and adapt to the changing needs of the community. They had added financial education programs, mobile health clinics, and green energy initiatives, always seeking new ways to improve people's lives. Daniel, though officially retired, remained a constant presence at the centers, his wisdom and experience always valued. He and Michael had forged an unbreakable bond over the years, their brotherhood stronger than ever. Elena, his rock and life partner, had been instrumental at every step of the way. Her love and support had been Michael's anchor during tough times and his joy in the good times. As the sun set, painting the sky with golden and pink hues, Michael looked around with a deep sense of peace and gratitude. His life, once empty and meaningless, was now filled with love, purpose, and the satisfaction of having made a real difference in the world. Are you all right, my love? Elena asked, noticing Michael's distant gaze. He smiled, his eyes shining with tears of happiness. More than all right, my love. I'm at peace. I feel complete. At that moment, as if the universe wanted to underline his words, a gentle breeze blew through the garden, carrying the scent of flowers and the sound of children's laughter. Michael closed his eyes, soaking in the moment. He thought about the man he once was, the long road he had traveled, and all the lives they had touched along the way. He thought about little Abella, whose innocent question had set everything in motion, and about Lucy, carrying on that legacy of love and service. And he knew with absolute certainty that this was the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't the millions in his bank account or the titles and power he once held. True wealth was right here, in this moment, in the love of his family, the gratitude of his community, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. Michael Johnson, once a lonely millionaire, had found a treasure far more valuable than any material fortune. He had found love, purpose, and the joy of giving, and in the process, he had discovered the true riches of the soul. As night gently fell over the neighborhood, the Johnson family remained together on the porch, sharing stories, laughter, and love. And Michael, surrounded by the warmth of his family and the legacy of his work, knew that he had lived a truly rich life. This was his happy ending, but also a new beginning, because the love and compassion they had planted would continue to flourish, touching lives and changing the world long after they were gone. And so, the story of Michael Johnson, the millionaire who discovered true wealth, came to an end. But his legacy, the impact of his transformation, and the love he had shared would continue to live on in the hearts of all those whose lives he had touched.